The ground was a cracked mosaic of scorched rock and ash, littered with the shattered remnants of human and alien technology. Captain Elias Torin crouched behind a jagged outcrop, his breath coming in sharp. Control burst through the filters of his helmet. The Zarthale patrol swept the area, their elongated limbs and gleaming exoskeletons casting eerie reflections under the moon's weak light. Elias's pulse hammered, but his grip on the plasma rifle remained steady. He was alone now, the last of his unit, and every movement had to count. A burst of alien chatter broke through the silence, the guttural tones incomprehensible but unmistakably urgent. They knew he was here. Elias's mind raced. His mission was clear. Hold this ground, delay the Zarthale advance, and give humanity's forces a chance to regroup. Reinforcements were hours away, perhaps longer. He peered over the outcrop. 5 Zarthale soldiers fanned out across the debris field, their rifles sweeping methodically. Their advanced optics made hiding almost impossible, and Elias knew their exoskeletons could shrug off glancing hits. He tapped the side of his rifle, switching to maximum charge. 1 shot, 1 kill. That was his only option. Elias's jaw tightened as he recalled the last transmission from General Marcus Cord. "You're the best we have, Captain. If anyone can hold them, it's you. But make no mistake. This is a suicide mission." Cord's tone had been even, almost apologetic, but Elias had heard the unspoken words. "The fate of the colony depends on you." The weight of that responsibility pressed on him now, but Elias had no time for doubt. He lined up his shot, targeting the lead Zarthale. The alien's silver eyes glinted, scanning the darkness. Elias exhaled slowly and fired. The bolt of plasma sizzled through the air, striking true. The Zarthale collapsed, its armor melting away to reveal the charred flesh beneath. The remaining soldiers responded instantly, their weapons unleashing a torrent of energy bolts. Elias ducked back, the ground around him erupting in a cascade of molten rock. His cover wouldn't hold for long. He scanned the terrain, his eyes locking on a cluster of wrecked vehicles. If he could reach them, he'd have a better chance of holding off the patrol. Elias bolted, his boots kicking up ash as he sprinted toward the wreckage. Energy bolts streaked past, one searing a line across his shoulder armor. Pain flared, but he didn't slow. He dove behind the vehicles, rolling to absorb the impact. A quick glance confirmed his armor's integrity was compromised, but he was alive. The Zarthale advanced cautiously, their formation tightening. Elias used a brief respite to assess his surroundings. Among the wreckage lay the shattered hull of a human dropship. Its power core was intact, but leaking volatile energy. An idea formed, reckless but effective. He grabbed a length of cabling and jury-rigged a makeshift detonator. The dropship's core would create a blast large enough to take out the patrol, but he'd need to lure them closer. Elias checked his rifle's charge. Only 2 shots remained. He'd have to make them count. "Come on," he muttered under his breath, positioning himself for a clear shot. The Zarthale were within range now, their rifles trained on his position. Elias fired, striking another soldier square in the chest. The alien fell, its death cry echoing across the battlefield. The remaining 3 charged, their confidence bolstered by their superior numbers. Elias triggered the detonator and ran. The explosion ripped through the air, a fiery plume consuming the Zarthale. The shockwave knocked Elias off his feet, his helmet cracking against a chunk of debris. He lay still for a moment, the world spinning. When he finally pushed himself up, the battlefield was eerily quiet. But it wasn't over. In the distance, more Zarthale ships descended, their engines glowing ominously. Elias's heart sank. He bought time, but not enough. Reinforcements were still hours away, and his resources were nearly depleted. He staggered toward the nearest piece of cover, his injured shoulder protesting with every step. As he moved, memories of his unit surfaced unbidden. He saw their faces, heard their voices, felt their loss as a physical ache. They'd trusted him to lead, to bring them home. Instead, he'd watched them fall one by one, their cries of pain and defiance haunting him still. Elias reached a crumbled wall and slumped against it, his breath ragged. The Zarthale would come for him again, and he'd meet them. He had no illusions about survival, but he'd make them pay for every inch of ground. Humanity's resilience wasn't in its technology or its numbers. It was in moments like this, when a single individual stood against impossible odds and refused to break. Elias tightened his grip on his rifle and prepared for the next wave. The derelict alien outpost loomed ahead, its twisted metal walls rising from the barren landscape like the bones of some long-dead giant. Captain Elias Torin stumbled through the jagged terrain, his every step a battle against exhaustion and pain. His injured shoulder throbbed with a steady, punishing rhythm, but he couldn't stop now. The Zarthale were relentless, and he needed time to regroup, to think. He reached the outpost's shattered entrance and slipped inside, his rifle held at the ready. The air inside was stale, tinged with the acrid scent of burned circuitry. Elias activated his helmet's light, sweeping it across the gutted interior. Alien consoles flickered weakly, their symbols incomprehensible to human eyes. The Zarthale had abandoned this place, but its secrets might still hold value. For now, it was shelter, a fragile reprieve in the chaos of war. He slumped against a wall, his body screaming for rest. Removing his helmet, Elias winced as he examined the gash on his shoulder. The armor had absorbed most of the energy, but the wound beneath was raw and ugly. He retrieved a field kit from his pack, his fingers fumbling with the bandages. Each movement sent fresh waves of pain coursing through him, but he forced himself to continue. The wound had to be cleaned and sealed. There was no room for weakness. As he worked, his mind drifted to the message he had received before everything fell apart. General Marcus Cord's voice, distorted by static, had cut through the chaos with grim determination. "Hold your position, Captain. Reinforcements are on their way, but we need more time. The Zarthale cannot advance beyond that line. Do whatever it takes." The memory was a cold comfort now. Reinforcements might come, or they might not. Either way, Elias was alone. He clenched his jaw, anger bubbling beneath the surface. Humanity had faced annihilation before, and they had always found a way to endure. This time would be no different. He had to believe that. A faint sound drew his attention, snapping him back to the present. The hum of alien machinery grew louder, punctuated by the distant click of Zarthale communication. They were close. Elias forced himself to his feet, every muscle protesting. He couldn't afford to be caught off guard. Moving deeper into the outpost, he searched for anything that could give him an edge. In the heart of the structure, he found it. A glowing artifact rested on a pedestal, its surface etched with intricate, otherworldly patterns. It pulsed with an energy that made the air around it hum. Elias approached cautiously, his instincts warning him of the unknown. Whatever this artifact was, the Zarthale wanted it badly enough to station troops here before retreating. That made it important, perhaps even vital. His fingers hovered over the artifact, the temptation to take it overwhelming. But a single glance at his surroundings told him it was a trap. The pedestal was rigged with sensors, and tampering with the artifact would likely alert the Zarthale to his presence. He couldn't afford to be reckless, not now. Elias's earpiece crackled to life. A burst of static followed by a faint voice. "Torin, Captain Torin, do you copy?" It was Cord. Relief surged through Elias, though he kept his voice steady. "I copy," barely holding position. "Zarthale are closing in." "Understood," Cord replied. "Reinforcements are delayed. You need to hold. There's something in that outpost the Zarthale cannot have. Do you see it?" Elias glanced at the artifact. "I see it. Some kind of alien device. It's rigged. Destroy it if you have to." Cord's voice was resolute. "But don't let it fall into their hands. We're counting on you, Captain." The line went dead, leaving Elias with the weight of impossible decisions. His mission had been to delay the enemy, but now he was guarding something far greater. The artifact's energy pulsed in time with his heartbeat, its glow almost hypnotic. He didn't know what it was or why it mattered, but he knew one thing. It couldn't leave this place. The sound of approaching footsteps shattered his reverie. The Zarthale were inside. Elias moved quickly, setting traps with the last of his explosives. He positioned himself in the shadows, his rifle trained on the entrance. The first alien stepped through, its silver eyes scanning the room. Elias fired, the plasma bolt striking true. The Zarthale crumpled, but its comrades pressed forward undeterred. The fight was brutal and unrelenting. Elias used every advantage the outpost offered, his traps and ambushes whittling down the enemy's numbers. His movements were precise, his aim deadly, but exhaustion was a constant threat. Each skirmish left him weaker, his injuries and fatigue taking their toll. A Zarthale officer entered the room, its armor more elaborate than the others. It moved with a predator's confidence, its weapon aimed directly at Elias. The two locked eyes, a silent acknowledgement of the stakes. Elias fired first, but the officer dodged with inhuman speed, returning fire with devastating precision. Elias dove behind cover, the wall beside him disintegrating under the alien's assault. Desperation fueled him now. He grabbed a shard of broken metal and hurled it at the officer, distracting it long enough to land a critical shot. The alien staggered, its weapon clattering to the floor. Elias didn't hesitate, finishing the job with a final, decisive bolt. The room fell silent once more, save for the hum of the artifact. Elias leaned against the wall, his vision swimming. He'd won this round, but the cost was high. His strength was nearly gone, and reinforcements were still a distant hope. He turned his gaze to the artifact. The decision loomed before him. Destroy it now or risk holding out until help arrived. The weight of the choice pressed on him, but there was no time for doubt. He reached for his communicator, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "Cord," he said, "I'll hold as long as I can. But if they breach this room again, the artifact is gone." "That's a promise." The silence that followed was almost comforting. Elias knew he might not survive the next wave, but he also knew he wouldn't falter. Humanity's survival demanded nothing less. The walls of the alien outpost shook as the Zarthale assault intensified, their relentless advance threatening to overwhelm what little defenses Captain Elias Torin had managed to assemble. He stood at the center of the room, the glowing artifact casting shadows that danced across his battered armor. His breaths were shallow, the weight of exhaustion and injury dragging him down. But his resolve remained unbroken. This was a line, and he would not let it fall. The first breach came with a deafening explosion. Shrapnel rained across the room, and Elias ducked behind a piece of shattered machinery, his rifle primed. The Zarthale poured in, their movements fluid and precise, their silver eyes reflecting the artifact's pulsating glow. Elias opened fire, his first shot taking down the lead soldier. He moved swiftly, each shot deliberate, every step calculated. The battle was chaos, but his focus was absolute. The alien invaders pressed forward, their advanced weaponry tearing through the outpost's fragile structure. Elias fought like a man possessed, his every action a testament to humanity's resilience. He lured the Zarthale into traps, used the terrain to his advantage, and turned their own arrogance against them. But for every soldier he felled, more seemed to take their place. The room was becoming a tomb, and he knew his time was running out. A sudden lull in the fighting gave Elias a moment to assess the situation. His ammunition was nearly depleted, and the artifact's glow was intensifying, its energy pulsing faster as if responding to the conflict. He approached it cautiously, the hum of its power resonating in his chest. Whatever this device was, it was no mere weapon. It was something far more dangerous, something the Zarthale would stop at nothing to claim. His communicator crackled to life. "Torin, this is Cord. Reinforcements are en route. ETA 10 minutes. Hold the line." Elias's grip tightened around his rifle. 10 minutes. It might as well have been an eternity. Understood, he replied, his voice steady despite the storm raging within him. He turned his attention back to the artifact. If the Zarthale breached the room again, he wouldn't let them take it. He'd destroy it, no matter the cost. The walls trembled again, a low rumble signaling the approach of something far more formidable than the foot soldiers he'd faced so far. The Zarthale commander entered, its towering form encased in armor that shimmered with an unnatural light. It carried a weapon unlike anything Elias had seen, a massive blade, crackling with energy. The commander's presence filled the room with a palpable menace, and for a moment, even the artifact seemed to dim in response. Elias squared his shoulders, his exhaustion forgotten in the face of this new threat. He fired, but the commander deflected the shot with a swift, almost casual movement of its blade. The alien spoke, its guttural language a harsh contrast to the silence that followed. Elias didn't need a translator to understand the challenge. This was a fight to the death. The battle was brutal and unrelenting. The commander moved with a speed and precision that belied its size, its blade carving through the air with lethal intent. Elias dodged and countered, his rifle a poor match for the alien's weapon, but he fought with the desperation of a man who had nothing to lose. Each exchange was a test of will, a clash of strength and cunning. The commander lunged, its blade grazing Elias's side and sending him crashing to the ground. Pain flared, but he forced himself to roll away, narrowly avoiding a killing blow. He scrambled to his feet, his vision blurred, his breath ragged. The alien advanced, its blade poised for the final strike. Elias's hand found the detonator he'd rigged to the artifact. His thumb hovered over the trigger as he locked eyes with the commander. "Not today," he muttered and pressed the button. The explosion was instantaneous, a blinding surge of energy that consumed the room. Elias felt the force of it lift him off his feet, the heat searing through his armor. The world became a blur of light and sound, and then silence. When he opened his eyes, the room was a smoldering ruin. The artifact was gone, its energy expended in the blast. The Zarthale commander lay motionless, its armor cracked and lifeless. Elias pushed himself up, every movement a struggle. He had done it. The artifact was destroyed, and the enemy's advance had been halted. The sound of engines roared above, and moments later, human dropships descended, their lights cutting through the haze. General Marcus Cord was the first to emerge, his expression a mix of relief and grief as he approached Elias. "Captain," Cord said, his voice heavy, "you held the line." Elias managed a faint smile. "Not sure there's much of a line left." Cord placed a hand on his shoulder. "Because of you, there's still a fight to be won. Humanity owes you everything." Elias nodded, the weight of his actions settling over him. He had fought alone, but he had not fought in vain. As the dropships lifted him to safety, he cast one last glance at the battlefield below. It was a place of destruction and loss, but also of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, humanity would endure.